Kevin Feige on Spider-Man, Endgame, and the MCU. It's been an amazing journey. In the first of 3 exclusive filmmaker interviews for Spider-Man Far From Home, the Marvel boss chats about completing the Infinity Saga. Kevin Feige is a man who knows a thing or two about comic book movies. The president of Marvel, and with Spider-Man Far From Home, the 23rd movie in the 11-year-old franchise and the official end of the 3-phase Infinity Saga, he looks set to repeat the previous movie's success. The follow-up to It hasn't always been like this, though. Before Marvel became, luckily, it was a gamble that paid off and then some. Here, it's been a massive year for you with obviously Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, and now Spider-Man Far From Home bringing Phase 3 to a close. How does it feel? Not exhausted? No. It's exhilarating. One of the things that I was so excited about with Endgame and Far From Home was doing something that hadn't really been done before, certainly with these kinds of comic book characters, which was a conclusion, a finality, to a 23-movie Infinity Saga arcade. But I was also in some ways, Far From Home feels like a palate cleanser after Endgame, and it ties up some of that film's loose ends. But it also very 100% cheery. And John Watts what is it that made John stand out as the right person to be the custodian of Spider-Man? He seems to have absolutely, cop car, in particular, Ace, a great movie. It's tense, incredibly funny, and he gets these incredibly natural performances between 2 young actors and a great performance by a great actor, Kevin Bacon. He can manage that. You mentioned the visuals. Without going into spoilers, there are some bits in this film that really are visually spectacular. Is it kind of a chat? Yeah, for sure. And certainly with it, I don't think we sit down and go, we've got to up the ante. How do we make things? Going back to Spidey himself, Tom Holland seems to have been a casting decision that's more than paid off. As much as this film, yes, and that duality has always existed between Tom and the character, going back to the first audition he did with Robert Downey Jr. The dynamic between, you mentioned the 23-movie Infinity Saga, which is kind of unprecedented. We haven't really seen anything like this done before. What have you learned? Well, it's been the better part of 20 years of my life. This August will be coming up on 19 years at Marvel. And it's been very that's what's exciting about it, and that's what makes it so damn hard. But the best thing, how did Jake Gyllenhaal feel about joining the Marvel team? Especially as, from our point of view, we were just lucky that he agreed to do it, because we had a feeling he'd do an amazing job with all the different aspects of Mysterio. He's also I think he was excited to join the universe but wanted to be sure that he was going to be additive to it. And we knew he would. With this franchise, specifically, there were obviously some conversations with Sony that had to happen to get this off the ground. How much of a game? Absolutely, it was great. And it was a testament. The superhero movie landscape is very different now to when you worked on the first X-Men movie, where comic book movies weren't really afforded the same respect they are now. How has it been for you? Well, I am very happy about that, and I feel very satisfied that the hard work we've done over the years has paid off. I am also so the fact that we've changed that is nice. But there's also Spider-Man Far From Home hits UK cinemas on July 2nd. MSN are empowering women in sport this summer. Find out more about gallery. In which order should you watch every Marvel movie and TV show? Pocket Lint.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. I keep fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.